Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Here at Asha, we aim to inspire, empower and transform individuals. As this week has been about depression, let's start this podcast with a fun fact. Did you know depression is a common mental disorder that affects more than 264 million people of all ages? That includes children, adults, adolescents and elderlies. Such a huge number, and yet those who go through depression feel so alone in this journey. Now, although these numbers tell us how common it is, it doesn't quite tell us what it feels like and how each of us experience it in our own unique way. So today we decided to create a podcast where we have our guest speaker Sribha, all the way from Houston, Texas, who has dealt with depression herself and learned ways to cope.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me here today.
Sribha, we're so grateful to have you share your experience. I think sharing these personal experiences will be really useful, and it will allow many of us who might be going through something similar to relate and know that they're not alone. And hopefully we will be able to have a better knowledge and learn ways of managing so that we are all equipped to help ourselves or our loved ones who may be going through something similar. So Sribha, you've been quite interested in speaking up about mental health. How did you build the confidence to open up about your experience with depression?
Well, I feel it is very important to normalize mental health and where we are able to talk about it without feeling judged or ashamed. And I know we have been moving towards this goal slowly day by day, but there's definitely a long way to go. And I believe eradicating the stigma that has surrounded mental health issues is the first step. And I do think that I'm making an effort today by talking about it to you guys.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much stigma attached with mental health, and it's so important to talk about it, to normalize it. And we're really glad to have you here speak up about your experience and help ease with that. And hopefully after listening to your experience, more people feel comfortable with talking about their mental health. So thank you for that. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your journey with depression?
My journey with depression lasted a few months actually. It wasn't a constant smooth ride, and there were days of severe sadness, and there were days where I thought I made it through, but suddenly it would hit me all over again.
So there were a lot of fluctuations of mood and a rocky journey for you, is that right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's go into a bit more detail so our listeners get a better understanding. What were some of the symptoms that you were experiencing? And if it helps, maybe you could give us an idea of what your day looked like?
Some of the symptoms I came across were not being able to find satisfaction or joy in my day-to-day activities. I was always feeling really low, and I didn't have an appetite or desire to get out of my bed. Loss of interest and irregular patterns in my daily activities continued, and it was hard to do things I was used to be doing. And all I wanted to do was stay in my room and not to speak to anyone.
Yeah, that sounds very difficult for you, especially with the changes in your daily activities. You mentioned feeling sad. As humans, it's natural for us to feel sad, and for those who are introverts, it may actually be within their nature to not want to interact with people as often. So how were you able to recognize that it was something more and that it was depression?
Yeah, there were days when I slept for more than 14 hours. I was very irritable and got angry through the things that I usually wouldn't. And I was quite an extrovert before during this time period. I just wanted to stay in my room, isolate myself from everyone. However, for an introvert, it may be that they're naturally quiet, so it could be more difficult to spot any significant change, but they may be losing their interest in doing what they normally used to do too. And although for me, it was different as I was always quite bubbly and I could really see a change in my attitude and my daily routine. So it was also quite noticeable within my close circle, and people around me were able to tell that I wasn't feeling myself.
Yeah, that makes sense, as I guess with depression, not only do you lose interest with what you love, but you have a persistent feelings of, hopelessness as a sign. So I guess the take-home message for our audience would be, if you start seeing a slight change in your behavior, then you should pay a bit more attention just to, notice whether that is depression or not. So with depression, along with the behavioral changes, we experience certain thoughts that reinforce those behaviors. What were some of the thoughts that you were going through?
Some of the thoughts were not feeling worthy enough, feeling stuck, feeling like I wasn't ever going to get better, and feeling like everyone is superior than me. I compared myself to others who seemed like they were doing better than me emotionally. Others who seem like they were in a better place than me, and I felt like I would never get to that place. And the key word is seem, because I don't know what's really going on in other people's lives, and they don't know what's really going on in mine. And that's really important to remember, because knowing you're not the only one feeling like this, knowing that there is not something wrong with you, particularly that this is something common and can give you hope. Surely if this many people experience this, then somewhere out there are people finding a way out of it, and maybe not completely, but bit by bit. So that means you will also get out of it.
Yeah, certainly. And did you try to do anything to change some of your behaviors?
Yeah, I was fed up with how I was feeling, and so I had to build that motivation to make a change. Like, being sad became tiring at one point, and I really wanted to get better, so I started focusing more on what interested me before depression, like how I was before, what I used to do, and I tried to trace back to that and continue doing those activities to see if that would help change my behavior.
Yeah, that's really good that, you were able to reflect and try to gain a better understanding of some of the changes in your behavior, and most importantly, try to encourage yourself to engage in activities that you enjoyed, which I guess is really hard. So even though you were trying to engage yourself in changing your new habits to your old ones, how did you then identify that you still needed professional help?
I figured I wanted to seek therapy because I was aware that it could help. Beginning of freshman year, I was taught about it and exposed to the idea of therapy through family and friends. We have counseling services, and I knew about some of the helplines that I could use, so it occurred to me that I should consider therapy, and so I did.
That's really good. But I don't know if you know, but there are many therapies out there at the moment, and not many people know the difference, or in fact know that there are options within talking therapies. So how were you able to recognize that the therapy you sought was the right one?
I was lucky enough to have therapy services available at my school, and so it was easily accessible for me. And through this, I was exposed to different types of therapy, so I went for counseling first.
Yeah. Tell us more about the therapy you received.
I was taught techniques to challenge my negative thoughts and how to think in an effective, positive way and identify what was contributing towards my depression. And through this, I learned how to clear my thoughts and move forward.
That's good. That's good that the counselling was really helpful for you. I know that mental health is still a new subject for many, and not everyone might be familiar with this topic. So, did you feel you had the right support around you in terms of your friends and family understanding what you were going through?
I'm lucky enough to have a tremendous amount of support from my family and friends, and my mom was a constant towards my journey, and I was totally surprised. Like, I did not expect her to give me that kind of support and understand me at all, but she did, and she understood me like no other person would, and the support I got is one of the main reasons why I'm being able to talk to you openly today. And it felt so good to have people to push you towards getting better and be there for you throughout your journey. And I will always be grateful for them.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that your mum was always around. I think with the lack of awareness, not everyone is as fortunate as you were, where they have someone who can understand. And because of that, it usually worsens the symptoms. However, with the stigma associated with mental health, did you face any challenges with reaching out for help?
First of all, I was in denial. I didn't want help. I kept telling myself I'm fine, it's not a big deal. And that's because I didn't want to admit that something was wrong with me. And I was tired of listening to people who had to say, oh, get over it. It is what it is. Just move on from the situation and you'll be fine. And I was afraid of judgment from people in my community. I didn't want anyone outside of my circle to know. So within the South Asian society, mental health is almost a taboo. So I thought if I reached out for help out of home, eventually it will come back to me and everyone will get to know. And that was like one of the biggest fears I had to face.
I understand that. It must have been quite difficult for you to be in this position, especially when hearing people say things like, get over it, and people around you aren't as accepting of mental health. But I'm glad that you were able to get the support you needed from your family. How were you able to get back to being you?
Like I mentioned earlier, I try to change some of my behaviors and my routine. So I try to engage myself in activities such as restarting my singing lessons, volunteering at clinic, focusing on school more, modeling and shoes, which I recently started, and focusing on what made me feel more content, and making realizations about how to deal with the negativity that comes with the things I do. I can basically say I rediscovered myself, and I try to retrace my interests as well as discovering new ones.
Yeah, that sounds really good that, you were able to rediscover yourself. And as an audience, to those who are listening to this podcast, hearing your experience might give some hope. So what would you say the take-home message would be?
All I want to say to the listeners today is that I am one in many who have faced this problem, and I know I might face it again, but I can tell you that next time I know ways to cope with this. I came to the conclusion that I'm not alone in this, and so aren't any of you guys. I believe change starts within, and once you admit you have an issue and you're determined to get better and you're also ready to seek help that you need, you will definitely see progress, and that progress will keep you going. And everyone around you will help you out if you just give them a chance.
That is very encouraging for you, for, even for people who might be going through the same thing. And thank you for sharing your experience. Well, we have now come to the end of this podcast. And once again, I would like to say thank you so much for your time, Sribha. And I really appreciate you opening up today.
Thank you to you too for giving me this opportunity to share my story to the listeners today. Also, a huge shout out to all my family and friends for giving me the love and support, as it helped me a lot.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to a lot of things you've said, and it takes a great amount of courage to do so. So thank you once again. And honestly, guys, if you're going through depression and all you did today was get out of your bed, you have done a lot. It takes a great deal of energy to even do that. And to everyone else, always look out for one another. Be open to educating yourself about mental health, because mental health is something we all have and should acknowledge. I would like to end this with a beautiful quote by John Green. There is hope even when your brain tells you there isn't. And remember, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. So take care, and thank you for listening to our podcast.